body's finished. I'm happy with the way this has gone. It looks great. The finishing oil's gone on really well, and it's left it with a lovely lustre, so that's good. We've had a look at the scratch plate. That's all working too, so that's ready to go. The next thing we need to do is some work on this neck, so I need to check whether all the frets are level and sort anything out that needs sorting out. Clean and condition the fretboard, and then we can string it up and we can get down to the setup. But the first thing that I need to do before doing the neck is actually to put the guitar back together, so that's the next thing I'm going to do. Back together now completely. The only thing left to do really is the setup. So the bridge is back in, tremolo springs in place, the neck's on, etc, etc. So what we're going to do next is my standard setup, and we start off with checking the frets to make sure there is no unevenness across the fretboard. Obviously if there are any frets that are higher than the adjacent ones, then that's going to interfere with the playability of the guitar. So let's do that first. So the first tool I'm going to use is this fret rocker. It's basically a piece of aluminium, I think, and the sides have been ground perfectly flat, different lengths, so you can put these over the tops of 3 frets at a time and check and see if there's any wobble. If there's any wobble, that means the fret in the middle is too high and it needs to be tapped back in, or it could be that you may have to file it down level, re-crown it and polish it. So let's start at the top, and I do 3 positions, each side and the middle, so that I know that across the whole fret it's even. And as I'm going down the fretboard, I'm just changing to different lengths of this fret rocker, because obviously the gaps between the frets get narrower. Great news, we haven't got any high frets on this fretboard, so I can go straight on to the next step, which is to polish the frets. And the way I do this is with a Dremel, and I've got my Dremel here, and the Dremel's got a woolen pad on it, a round pad, and I use some polishing compound, which I bought about 6 years ago, and I've used about 1/3 of it. It'll last for a fair bit longer, I should think. I just put a bit of this on the pad, and then I use one of these fret protectors, put it on the fret, and we just polish the frets one at a time. So let's have a bit of music while I do this, because it's extremely noisy and you wouldn't be able to hear what I'm saying anyway. Oh, safety glasses. So even though these frets were very corroded really from having been, well, the guitar been untouched for probably decades, you can get them back looking really nice. So they look very nicely polished now. So now what I'm going to do is get some conditioner into this fretboard. It's an ebony fretboard according to specs, certainly looks and feels like ebony. Very, very tough, hardly any wear. In fact, there's the only bit of wear is just very faintly around this area. And that will clean up the fretboard. Actually, I'm going to clean the fretboard first. So the stuff I use for cleaning the fretboard is Dunlop's 01. And this is specifically a fretboard cleaner, but I also find it's really, really good at cleaning gunk off any surface that isn't nitro. So I wouldn't use it on a nitro painted guitar, but you can use it on a body if it's poly finish, and it does a really good job of cleaning muck off. Just anything organic it seems to specialise in. I think it's been formulated for that, because obviously you get finger grease on fretboards, and this cleans it off magnificently. So I'll just get my piece of cloth, spray a bit of this stuff onto the cloth, and just give it a good wipe. Sometimes, and you're not supposed to do this, but sometimes I spray it directly onto the fretboard if it's really filthy, just to give it a few seconds to soften the crud on the surface, because sometimes you just get a layer of basically dead skin, which is not very nice, but dead skin on the fretboard, which just builds and builds. And it can be quite difficult to get off, but this stuff is good at getting it off. This will clean up virtually any kind of dirt. That's clean. Got all the polishing compound off the frets. I've cleaned the fretboard, and now I'm going to condition the fretboard. So what I use for conditioning fretboards is not what is generally recommended, like lemon oil stuff or any of the other synthetic or supposedly natural things that people use. I don't think it's a good idea to put anything that's got any petrochemical derivative in it on a fretboard, because if it's got that in it, it's going to evaporate the oils in the fretboard. It doesn't matter if there are oils in the stuff that you're putting in, you're not really helping by putting petrochemicals in. So what I use is, apologies for the state of this bottle, it's been like this for years. This is olive oil and hazelnut oil, which I found to be the best thing to use. I used to use not hazelnut, walnut oil. Walnut oil on its own I used to use, but it was too sticky. So what I found was if you mixed it with virgin olive oil, that gave you a really good mixture. And you won't see it on this board because it's a dark ebony board, but what this also does is it really brings the grain out and makes any board really, any rosewood board, look absolutely fantastic. I mean, even if it's completely ancient, grooved, pitted, whatever, you put some olive and walnut oil on, and so I'm putting a bit on, and I'm mostly getting rid of it. Again, I'm leaving a bit on there to soak in, but it will soak in. It won't soak in quickly because it's not been diluted by any petrochemicals. But by the time I finish the setup, this fretboard will be dry again. It will have soaked in. So I'm using 10 gauge Ibanez strings, the XLs, just the normal nickel wound ones. Obviously, because this is a Floyd Rose, we need to chop the balls off the ends of these strings. So let's get this stringing up done. I always start with the thickest string. I don't know why, it's just a habit. I don't think it makes a lot of difference. I need a 3mm Allen key. Will go in the end here and open up the gap for the string to go in. And let's hope it's not just rusted. No, it's not, it's fine. Because I've cleaned this up a bit, so these should be alright. And then I'll just tighten it up. That's really all there is to sticking the Floyd Rose strings in. I have seen people use the ball end of the string and put the ball end in here and then lock it in, which you can do with some Floyd Roses. And obviously that makes it a little bit secure, but what I also found with that is it's a bit of a difficult job to get it out, and I'm not sure that's how it's intended to work, because with these locks you get a really good contact with the string and it transfers vibrations better. So we've got all the strings in. Now I need to take these locking blocks, or whatever they're called, I'm not really sure what they're called, I'll just call them locking blocks, off the nut. These were the wrong way round. They should be that way round, so the ridge in the middle is in the same direction as the neck. And I'm also going to take this string retainer off as well, because it just gets in the way when you're stringing up a guitar. So 2 Phillips screws. And while we're here, I'm going to give this a bit of a clean too. Now, again, I'm going to use the 01 for this. See how easily that just takes off everything and pretty much restores that back to, if it wasn't for the chips, it would look new. I'm also going to take the truss rod cover off, because I may need to adjust the truss rod, and it's easier to do it now than when I've strung the guitar up. You may be wondering why I use such a long screwdriver, and the reason is because it makes it a lot easier to judge where you've got the head of the screwdriver into the top of the screw properly straight, because you can see down the length. You've got the whole length to judge that, so it's just easier. Gives me a chance to properly clean up around the truss rod cover as well. So that's done. So now we can just string these up as you normally would. So there's one loop around the top. And holding the string down so it goes underneath the remaining string that's sticking out. I've got 2 loops underneath the string, so that's what I want. And then I can cut off this bit at the end. So what I'm going to do now is tune this up without the locking nut on. Obviously, if I've been replacing strings on a Floyd Rose in normal circumstances, the way I would have done it is just take one string off at a time and put it back on, because the problem is with the Floyd Rose that if you take all the strings off, you've lost the balance of the tension between the strings and the springs in the back. So the springs in the back have to be adjusted so that the trem is level with the guitar body. It's a little bit easier with this model or the way actually that this guitar has been built, because with some Floyd Rose guitars what you will see is a cavity under here which allows the whole Floyd Rose to drop into the body so you can do pull-ups, but this one doesn't work that way. It's only down, because the wood hasn't been taken away underneath, so it can only lie flat. So it's a little bit easier to set up, because all we've got to do is get the tension of the springs tight enough so that it lies flat, and then gradually release it when it's in tune until the point where it's just sitting there. There's just enough spring tension, and the way that I'm going to do that is by putting a piece of paper underneath it. And when I can pull that piece of paper out, I know that that's where we've got to the right place, and I'll just tighten it up a little bit. So I'm just going to tune it up. Well, I'm going to plug in the tuner first of all, and hopefully that'll work if the electrics are all working properly, which I think they are. So we've got a Peterson tuner. And a decent guitar lead from D'Addario. Always a good idea to do one thing before you do this, is to put a socket on the guitar, and I forgot to do that, so let's put a socket on it. So the first thing I'm going to do with this jack socket that I took out previously is just clean it up a bit, because there's still residue of the old solder left on it, which I need to remove so that I can get the wires in. And I'm just going to use this solder pump for that. There we go. Right, so that's ready for soldering now. I can just put this in. These are a bit of a nuisance, these sockets are a pain, because basically you have to put the nuts on before you can start soldering. So you have to solder them inside the body of the guitar, which is a little bit more fiddly than your normal jack. And I always struggle with it a little bit, I must admit. I don't like it. Get these nuts on, and it can be just such a pain. And I need to find the right size spanner to do this up as well. And I can't remember what it is. We'll do that in a minute. Okay, so hot wire is generally the one that's sheathed, or the white one or the red one, and the ground wire or earth wire is the bare wire, or sometimes the black wire. And I can see where these were soldered in previously, so I'm just going to solder them back to where they were previously, and we'll keep our fingers crossed, and that should work. Sometimes you do need to test terminals on these sockets because they're not always the same. That's that. If you're doing any soldering, get the soldering iron tip really hot. If you're trying to do it with a 25 or 35 watt soldering iron, it's just not going to work properly, and unless you're lucky. But because it takes so long for those irons to heat up parts, you're transferring a huge amount of heat into a part over an extended period of time, and that could damage the part, especially a potentiometer. So what I've found personally is I want to get this iron hot. So I mean, for that it was at 360 degrees. If I'm soldering something to the back of a pot, I found with this iron that 410 is where I want it to be, which is really, really hot, but it does it really quick. So you're not risking damaging the part. So that's soldered up. So let's check if it works before I tighten everything up. Enough sound. So we're good. Okay. Back to, well, I'll tighten this up, but back to doing the setup. Put the tuner on. I can tell this is too low, so the whole bridge can be moved. You use the right Allen key. That was the wrong one. This is the right one. These two posts on either side move the whole bridge up and down. You don't get individual string height adjustment on a Floyd Rose. It is just, I'm just going to rough it in for where I think it should be. We might get a bit of, yeah, we will. We'll get some down movement on this as well. There's a little bit of space. Some up movement rather on the track. Okay, I'm going to have to, I know I'm going to have to tighten up this springs in the back, so I'm just going to put a little bit of tape just so it doesn't mark the finish. It will do anyway eventually, because just from playing it's just going to leave a dent, but anyway, good practice. Might need to add springs to this trem block, I don't know, I'll have to see. Might not be enough tension in there. This can take a little bit of time because you're going backwards and forwards. If you tighten one string up on a trem, the others all go loose again, so. You want to get the thicker ones done first because they have more of an effect on the tension of the strings overall. They're under more tension than the thin ones. This is a very frustrating thing to have to do, and until you've done it a few times, you really will spend a long time doing it. You can see that the trem's risen up quite a lot from where it was, so we've not got enough tension on that. So I'm just going to do an adjustment on that before I go any further, and that's obviously going to put more tension in the strings, which will raise the pitch. Just noticed another soldering job I've got to do, which is to attach the earth wire from the control panel to the trem. I need to extend this wire a little bit, it's not quite long enough anymore because I cut it off. So I just need to solder a little bit of extra wire on there. I'll do that in a bit. Don't need to do it right now. Still not level. But let's see what the pitch is now. It might be that it's got too high. I can drop the tension off the strings a bit and it will go back to, yeah. It's pretty close now. These tuners are not great, but with the micro tuners we'll be able to get this to stay in tune okay. I find when you're starting with the first string, if you just drop it a little bit lower than where you actually want it to be, by the time you've got to doing all the other ones, it's going to be more or less in the right place. And where are we with level now? I mean, that's pretty much level now. That's okay. Yeah, so I'm happy with that now. So we've got the spring tension right. We have actually got plenty of up trem as well because of the height of the posts. So it's inhibited by the body, but there's still probably quite a lot of movement in that. So good. So we've got that roughed in, so I can put the locking nuts on now and do the rest of the tuning with this, with the micro adjustment here, and that will allow me to get everything set to the right string height. When I've set everything to the right string height, I'm then going to adjust the intonation, which is the length of the string, and that's to ensure that as you're playing up the neck, the guitar stays in tune, so the strings are the right length as you approach the top. It's never perfect because this is a rough approximation. The standard guitar fretboard is a rough approximation of where those notes are. So although you're setting it so that you're in tune and open, and at the 12th fret, the first octave, on the rest of the strings it's a little bit in and out of tune, but that's part of the charm of the sound of the guitar. So let's get these top nuts on. Top nuts? Nut locks? What are they called? I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of this string retainer is really, because if you're using these locking nut things, anything that happens past them doesn't really have any significance in terms of the effect of the locking, so I don't know. Well, it's there anyway. So now all the tuning is going to be done down here on these micro tuners. And I'm actually going to start looking at it in a playing position. Obviously I can't really tune it accurately or do anything accurately sitting on this stand because there's extra tension on the neck. And now it's in pitch, I can also check the neck relief. And the way I'm going to check the neck relief is to lay the guitar flat, so there's nothing holding it at this end. That's playing tension. I get my straight edge in the middle of the neck, and I find 8, 6 and 10 on my feeler gauges. These are thousandths of an inch. You can do it in metric if you want, but this is the only thing I do in imperial really, but it's just a habit and it just seems to be easier to do it in thousandths. So that's about 11, so it's a little bit too much, so I want to find the right tool to adjust that, and I think it's one of these two. That's not big enough. And that's not big enough. How interesting. Wow, that's a surprise. The Gibson-sized truss rod adjuster works on this. So I've moved it about 1/8 of a turn clockwise as you're looking down the neck. And that's moved it quite a lot actually. It's about 7 now, and that's, I kind of like to get it to there, but it will really depend on how the relief is working, whether that gives us enough clearance for the low E strings to vibrate when we're playing them at the bottom of the bottom of the fretboard. So let's check that. Of course, we haven't really dialed in the height, but this is a rough guide, and that's fine. There's no buzzing there. Good. So we can put the retainer back on and put the truss rod cover back in. So my first setup job is the string height. And we've already roughed that in. I sort of did a ballpark guess of what the right height was, and what I'm going to use now is a string action gauge which has little marks on it which will show you the height. So this is back to metric, so what I'm aiming for roughly is 1.75mm on the low E string, and then the rest of the strings I want at just over 1.5 or maybe lower than that. Just depends on how the guitar works. Some guitars you can go lower and some guitars not. So let's check the low E. The low E is bang on, that's 1.75. The A is just above 1.5, and we're getting a little bit higher over to the other side, so actually not. No, I think yeah, that's fine. Actually, that's pretty much bang on. Now, if I was in need of adjusting that, I would simply use the Allen key on these posts and just give them a bit of a tweak, raise the whole bridge up or down. So I should be able to check for any problems with the frets. And there aren't any. Try a few bends out. Check if it's fretting out. There's no fretting out, so I think we've been a bit lucky with this guitar actually. Sometimes you'll find some high frets, so you have to go backwards and forwards with the action, the string height and the relief and everything, just to get the balances right, but this is pretty spot on. So out of tune, of course, so I'm just going to tune it up now with my micro tuners. So before you, I forgot to say, before you start tuning it up, you want to get these micro tuners all the way up, all the way out, and then just down a couple of turns, so you've got a bit of movement either way. You're usually going to be tightening it up, but you want a bit of movement in both directions, and the way they work is they're quite precise, and you just need to adjust them until they're on. So there we go, it's in tune. Actually it sounds pretty much in tune as I play up and down the fretboard. So I think the intonation is going to be pretty close, but I'm going to adjust it just to make sure if I need to. So let's check the first string, so that's bang on, open, and at the 12th fret, that's bang on as well. A is a little bit sharp. Okay, so we need to adjust A. So because it's a bit sharp at the 12th fret, I need to make the string a bit longer so that at the 12th fret the tone's a bit lower. So this is a pain. This is the major drawback with the Floyd Rose bridge, setting it up. Doing this job of the intonation is an absolute pain. So what I need to do is loosen off the locking nuts and loosen off the tension on the string, and then I can undo the locking bolts on the saddle for that string, and I can move the saddle back to make the string longer. So it's going to throw everything out, but as long as you do one string at a time, and take that string back up to tension again and lock the nut again, you're okay. Doesn't have to go all the way off, and it's usually the Allen key's a bit smaller than this. Sometimes it's the same one as that, which makes life easier, but it's not in this circumstance, so I've got to find the right Allen key, which could be any other number. It's not that one. It's quite a small one. Not that one. That's the chap. So I need to push the whole saddle back and then do the nut up. It's just so fiddly. I don't know why they designed it like this. And then bring it back up to pitch. That's it, and that's how it stands. So that's now in tune at open and at the 12th fret. So this guitar's now finished. I'm really pleased with the way it's turned out. I think the natural wood finish looks amazing on it, and it plays really well too. So you know, these buttons do change the sound. Sure what they're doing, to be honest. I'm assuming there's some parallel series, all sorts of things going on there, and the mixed positions, it changes them quite a lot. It doesn't do too much just with the single coils on their own, but when you mix them and also with the humbucker on its own, you do get different tones. So that's all working. I just need to, the only thing I've got left to do actually is to add another knob on here. This coil split work. Push-pull, or push-push rather. So I'm just going to put one knob on here. I actually couldn't get this knob off. I think it's corroded on. I didn't want to have to replace the pot because it was working. But if the client wants me to, I will just pull it off. It'll probably break the potentiometer on the other side, so I'll have to replace that. But that's not a big job. But yeah, Ibanez 1770 Pro Line, really nice guitar. It's great.